to order, and our invocation this morning will be given by Tom Hennis. Tom is chaplain of the Open Door Rescue Mission. I'll call Tom forward for our invocation. All rise.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the invitation to be here. I want to draw your attention to the picture that's back here on the wall. I want to read that's been hanging here since May of 2003. And the background behind that is when the Continental Congress met for the first time in Philadelphia on September 5th, 1774, the very first thing they did was to pass a resolution that Reverend Mr. Dush be invited to open Congress with prayer at 9 a.m. in the morning of September 6th. Some were opposed that they were too diverse in religious sentiment to join in the same act of worship. Mr. Samuel Adams arose and said that he could hear prayer from any gentleman of piety and virtue who at the same time is a friend to his country. He proposed that Mr. Deutsch might be desired to read prayers to Congress the following morning. The next morning, Mr. Deutsch read the Psalter for the 7th day of September. After this, Mr. Deutsch broke into spontaneous prayer. The others joined him and prayed fervently for America and Congress. They implored heaven for divine intervention. I want you to know that our community prays for our government. We are preparing for the National Day of Prayer on May 5th, Thursday evening. It starts at 7. Doors open at 6:30, and you're all welcome. And if we look at the word, we as ministers want to pray for you, our government, elected officials. And in 1 Timothy 2, starting in verse 1, therefore I exhort first of all that supplications, prayers, intercessions, and giving of thanks be made for all men, for kings and all who are in authority, that we may lead a quiet and peaceable life in all goodness and reverence. For this is good and acceptable in the sight of God our Savior. And so we come together in prayer this morning. Lord God, I pray that during this time of meeting that we acknowledge that no one person has the exact answer, but in working together and collaborating with one another, we pray for your peace and your wisdom to preside during this time of meeting, and we thank you for your presence here with us. Lord God, we pray that the difficulties that we have to face as a community, as a county, could be worked through, and that your goodness would abound, and that our behavior would be pleasing to you. Amen. And one thing on behalf of the Hudson Area Ministerial Association, I am the president, current president, and I would like to waive the fee, the nominal fee, or the nominal gift that comes along with that for today for myself. And we are having a meeting this afternoon, and I'll be making a motion to waive that going forward, and we'll follow up with a letter on that.
Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Supervisors, indicate your presence, please, with your roll call button. It is with a great amount of pleasure that I indicate this morning that we are at full strength. And what that means is that our vice chair, Esther Wentz, is back with us after an extended vacation.
Some vacation.
She can regale you with the details and the stories later. But Esther, it's really great to have you back after a couple of months.
It's nice to be back, and thank you all for your words of good cheer and for the cards and phone calls and visits. I really appreciate it. And let me tell you, I am so happy to be back. I know we complain about meetings and everything, but just be glad you can attend them. I am so glad to be back. Thank you.
The agenda has been distributed for your review. There are no additional suggestions or changes with respect to the agenda. Is there a motion on the consent agenda? Motion from Larson, second from Schrank. Yeah. Alfie, get your second in and vote on the consent agenda. And it is approved unanimously. Clearly, one of the pleasurable things we get to do as a board is to recognize significant accomplishments in our respective communities in the county. And today it is with a great amount of anticipation and pleasure that we're able to recognize some significant accomplishments. First of all, I'll recognize and call forward the Fusion Girls hockey team and their coach, Matt Cranston. They are state champions. It seems to me that this is becoming almost routine. Haven't we done this, 15 or 20 times in the past? I think this is fantastic. So, team, if you'd come forward, and Coach Cranston, the podium will be yours to recognize your team however you see fit. And congratulations to all of you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having us. This was our third straight time we've been here. This seems fit too because the St. Croix Valley Fusion is unique because it's not just one school. Most of girls varsity hockey in Wisconsin, there's 32 teams. All but 2, I think, are a co-op of some sort. Some of them, there's a couple in Madison and Milwaukee with 8, 9 different schools. We have 4, and it's River Falls, Baldwin Woodville, St. Croix Central, and 1 girl from Spring Valley. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it. Her calculus class was too tough. She said she couldn't afford to miss it. But I was hoping I would get the news this morning, too, to see if we won the Sportsmanship Award. But the last 3 years, we won the state championship WIA girls hockey tournament, and we won the Sportsmanship Award as well, which is equally important. I anticipate us winning it again this year, but I won't know for a week or so. But I would like all the girls to introduce themselves to everyone here, and I would like you to state your name.
Here's a microphone. You can just pass it right now.
Your name and where you're going to school and what grade you're in. And the seniors, I would like you to let us know what your future plans are. Our one senior that is not here, Sig Danger from Spring Valley, I think she'll be attending either Augsburg or Hamlin. I'm not sure. And I would like to introduce our 2 coaches. Ann Rock, right here, elementary teacher. Another elementary teacher is Carl Erickson. Both teach in River Falls. Okay, starting with Heather Shue.
Hi, I'm Heather Shue. I'm a sophomore for River Falls.
I'm Tara Fry. I'm a senior from River Falls, and next year I'm going to St. Norbert College.
Hi, I'm Nikki Plunkett from River Falls. I'm a senior, and I'll be going to Grand Rapids for community college and then transferring to Augsburg.
I'm Alice Cranston. I'm a senior at River Falls, and next year I'm attending UW River Falls.
Hi, I'm Brooke McMillan. I'm a senior from River Falls, and next year I'll be attending lacrosse.
Hi, I'm Tori Forsyth. I'm a freshman at River Falls.
I'm Sally Cranston. I'm a sophomore at River Falls.
I'm Miranda Vandell. I'm a sophomore at River Falls.
Hi, I'm Micah Bennett, and I'm a sophomore at River Falls.
I'm Georgie Shimmick, and I'm a junior at River Falls.
Hi, I'm Taylor McGill, and I'm a freshman at River Falls.
Hi, I'm Laura Kaimek. I'm a freshman at St. Croix Central.
I'm Aline Bronson. I'm a junior at River Falls.
I'm Tori Klingler, and I'm a junior at Baldwin Woodville.
I'm Kelsey Kiesel, and I'm a sophomore at Baldwin Woodville.
I'm Carly Christensen, and I'm a freshman at River Falls. I'm Haley Rock, and I am a junior at St. Croix Central.
I'm Callie Armagost, and I'm a sophomore at St. Croix Central.
I guess that's all I had. If there's any questions, we'd be willing to entertain them. But I appreciate you inviting us here, and it's a great experience for the kids. I'll just talk a little bit about the championship game. We went into 4 overtimes. For you hockey fans or non-hockey fans, that's a long game, because a regular hockey game is 3 periods, and then if it's tied, you go into sudden death. And we finally scored in the 4th overtime, and the boys' championship game was following it, so they came in, and we ended up winning the game probably in front of 8,000 to 10,000 people in Madison. So it was a great thing for girls athletics, and just a great experience for the kids in our band. The Baldwin band attended, and the River Falls band attended. So not only these girls had a great experience, but a lot of other kids and parents. So it was really, really fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. You're welcome. See you next year? Yep, hopefully.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Our next honorees are state wrestling champions from Glenwood City High School. Coach Shane Strong and his 2 champion wrestlers are here. I'd invite them forward, and Shane, the podium be yours. You can introduce your guys. When I went back and chatted with him earlier, I said I was a little in doubt which one was the coach, because they all look the same age to me, but when you get my age, everybody looks young, so welcome.
I appreciate that. Well, it's an honor to be here. We're excited to be here, so we thank you for the invite. These 2 boys, if you've ever had a chance to get to know these kids, you would understand why they've reached this goal. This is a dream that they've had since they were in 1st grade. And they're very humble kids, which is the best part about them. They realize that there are many people involved in their lives that have allowed them to get to this point, including their family, and our great community is very supportive in Glenwood City, and their coaches that have helped them up through the elementary programs, and parents, so they're very thankful for that. And I think if you would have a chance to get to know them, you'd understand that. They were both state champions this year. The best part is they're both sophomores. Going into the season, our goal, we had 3 state champions in our school history, and our goal was to double that in 1 year, and we were very close. They have their best friend, who's another sophomore, lost in the state semifinals with 30 seconds left on the clock, and we would have had 3 in the state finals, and he feels bad about that, but that'll motivate him for next year. So we were close to doubling that, and hopefully next year we can do that with hard work, and they understand that it will take more hard work in order to get to that point. The great thing about these kids is, and I think they understand more than anything, achieving that state championship, they've gained more through the experience, through the discipline, and the mental and physical preparation that they've had to put in. They understand that that's going to make them better men down the road. It'll make them great husbands and fathers and community members, and they have great parents. Great kids, that's what high school athletics is all about, not just the state title that they won or the hockey team up here winning a state championship. I'm willing to bet that those kids have learned some lessons that'll make them great people and supportive community members. So I don't know if they want to give words. They're pretty nervous. I know that we've had so many pep rallies and banquets and different things. We've had so much recognition in the last 3 weeks, and every time they're up there, they're a little nervous, even if they know the people that are out there. So again, we thank you for inviting us. It's a great honor. It's been fun, and we're very humbled to be in this position. So thank you.
There are some appointments to announce. They are listed on your agenda, but I'll call your attention to those. First of all, reappointments to the Council on Aging and Disabilities. The reappointments are Sue Nelson, Lois Burry, Verna Grant. These are all 3-year terms. Then we have a couple of appointments that fill vacancies that were created by the passing of Gene Ritz. We'll appoint Karen Meyer, new supervisor elected last month, to the Fair Board, and we will appoint Ryan Seacard to the Squaw Lake Rehabilitation District. And I've confirmed with both of them that they will accept those appointments, and so they will be so noted. We'll move to our agenda. We'll complete the first agenda item, and then I'm going to move to reports. We'll interrupt the distribution at that time, but right now, first of all, we're going to need to elect 2 supervisors to the Health and Human Services Board. These are 3-year terms, and the 2 incumbents whose terms are expiring are Supervisors Fred Horn and Alfie Schrank. We will elect 2 supervisors to fill those positions, and these terms also will be now for 3 years. So at this point, nominations will be open for the election of supervisors to the Health and Human Services Committee. Supervisor Marzov.
Mr. Chair, I nominate Fred Horn.
Fred Horn has been nominated. Seconds are not necessary. Further nominations, Ryan?
I nominate Alfie Schrank.
Supervisor Schrank has been nominated. Further nominations? Supervisor Malik?
I nominate Lawrence Sather.
Supervisor Sather has been nominated. Are there further nominations? Chair will inquire the second time, are there additional nominations? And third time, any additional nominations to the 3-year term on Health and Human Services? Seeing none, is there a motion to close nominations? And a second? Moved and seconded to close nominations. We'll simply do this by show of hands. All in favor, aye. Opposed, same sign, and nominations are closed. Yeah, you mean the nominations?
Who made the motion to close the nominations?
Oh, Larson and Rebels, the Rogers. You have some ballots? You will vote for 2. I suppose technically you could vote for 1, but you can't vote for 3, is really the point. Yeah, Greg is going to count. We probably ought to have one other person. Dave, you want to help? You want to help count ballots? Voting for no more than 2. We'll have Dave Ferdrosi and Greg Timmerman count the ballots. So it's done officially. I'll just announce it. Results of the balloting indicate that 2 supervisors did receive majorities, so they are in fact elected to the HHS committee, and they are Supervisors Horn and Supervisor Schrank. So they will now be in possession of 3-year terms on the HHS committee.
Announce the votes or not? You don't have to on this. I usually put them in.
I don't know if it's germane. At this point, I'm going to have Ellen Denzer give the first report. She is indicated in the agenda, so we'll move to agenda item number 2. And following Ellen's report on the redistricting process, which we will be doing as a result of the recently completed census, then we will move to the reports from Beth Pabst, Register of Deeds, and from Art Tobin, Building Services. Welcome, Ellen.
Thank you. Cindy's trying to get my quick visual aid out, so I'll just take a minute and introduce myself for the new supervisor. My name is Ellen Denzer. I am a senior planner in the Planning and Zoning Department. I've been with the county for 23 years, and I have been involved in the redistricting 3 times previously, in 1990, and after the 1990 census, after the 2000 census, and the redistricting that was done halfway through the last census, halfway through the last decade. So I've got a little experience in this project. That's a part of why they keep tapping me to keep doing it. So this should go fairly smoothly, and I think it should be a fairly good process. Here we are. How do I get this? Oh, I'm sorry. Hope everybody could hear me before. There we go. Thanks. Let's see if it works. Oh, cool. Okay, well, as most of you probably are aware, the official numbers from the 2010 census of the population have come out, and St. Croix County's population is 84,000 people. And that is a huge increase. We're officially, by percentage increase, the fastest growing county in the state of Wisconsin at 33+%. That's 21,000 additional people. And what that means when it comes to redistricting is that if we continue to have, which is the intent of the administration committee that's overseeing this project, 19 county board districts, then instead of representing 3,300 people as you do now, you will now in the future be representing 4,400 people, which is a big increase, 1,100 people more. And so as you can imagine, that means a shift, okay, in the supervisory districts. One of the disadvantages, possibly if you choose to look at it that way, of being the fastest growing county in the state is that your supervisory districts do not stay as constant as they would otherwise. The shapes, sizes, that kind of thing. So where did that growth occur? The fastest growing communities, interestingly enough, Spring Valley. And this is a good thing I always like to point out, is percentages can sometimes be misleading. Spring Valley grew from 2 people to 6 people. So it gets the honor of growing 200+%, and it is our fastest growing community. So, and we only have a small portion of Spring Valley in the St. Croix County side of their border, but that's the way it works. So our truly fastest growing community was the town of Hammond at 122%, which is huge. Richmond was close, then Roberts, Somerset, Hammond, and there were also some amazing increased numbers, but I didn't put them all on the list. And then what I like to put up here also, just to help see that there is a big difference between percentage increase and numeric increase. The fastest growing community numerically was the city of Hudson with 3,900 people. And just to refer you back to that previous slide, if you're each going to represent 3,300 people, and the city of Hudson grew by 3,900 people, that means the city of Hudson is going to gain 1 whole more supervisor for sure. Okay? So that's just the way the numbers work. Town of Hudson also grew by a huge amount, 2,200 people. New Richmond also 2,000+ people. So those areas will also be seeing big increases in the way the district supervisor lines are drawn. Somerset, 1,300, another huge number, almost 1,400, and the village of Baldwin, almost 1,300 people. So those were the biggest numbers. So then we need to look at what else happened out there. Well, we had decreases, percentage decreases. Again, Stanton lost 10% of their people. And I'll just kind of go back and forth because these tended to be similar. They lost 103 people in that community. Deer Park lost 5%, which actually only was 11 people, but still. And the village of Star Prairie lost 2%, which was 13 people. Rush River only grew by 2%. Baldwin 3%, the township, and Glenwood townships only 3 and 4%. So they definitely had increases, but they were very small. Numerically, Spring Valley with their 4 was not at the bottom because, again, we had some losses. And Wilson had 8, and Rush River had 10. So we had some very small increases in parts of this county, in addition to our very, very large increases to balance it all out. Okay. I'm going to just ask if Cindy could switch to that diagram. This was sent out to you guys ahead of time. It was a map that shows all these different changes, dramatic, sort of graphically. I tried to put it in my PowerPoint, and it did not work. We had some technical difficulties. So Cindy's just going to pop it up there. And I'm just going to take a minute before I move into redistricting and ask if you have any questions about the population shifts up and down. Okay. You all have that, and also what was sent to you attached to that were the actual hard numbers for all the communities. So if you feel like studying those at all, you have those exact numbers from population to housing. Okay. All right. No questions? Great. All right. Sorry to make you do all that, but I thought it was okay. They didn't have any questions. I guess I thought they would, so sorry. All right, on to redistricting. You also were sent, it's probably in black and white, but a quick little handout, and I'm going to go through that very briefly and then add to it a little bit. Whoops, we got to go all the way back through here. There we go. The first step in redistricting is to get the numbers. They release those gross numbers, like that's why you saw them probably 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. But the actual numbers, when they go all the way down to what we call the block level, for instance, a block in a city surrounded by 4 roads, that's what we call the block level. And those are what we have to use as the building blocks for redistricting. Those were not released until officially we got them at 5 p.m. on March 24th. So I put down March 25th, although it was noted in our official letter that the letter was dated March 21st, although we did not see any information until morning of March 25th. So that's our starting date. And everything starts from that date. We have 60 days to complete each of the 3 steps. So the clock started ticking. I have down on here that it must be completed by May 30th because I actually prepared this for the administration committee, and we assumed we would be getting it April 1st. It's not going to make that much difference, those 5 days, but it is kind of interesting how the state kind of puts a little extra pressure on you to make sure you're done as early as possible so that they can have their steps start. Basically, our first step is the hardest. We prepare county supervisory district plans that are reviewed under the administration committee. A recommended plan for them will then be brought to this county board. This county board will hold a public hearing, and then it will be sent out to all the cities, villages, towns, and other municipalities. Because within that county board proposed supervisory plan has to be created wards, and wards are sub-building blocks that are combined in different ways to make the county supervisory districts, to make local aldermanic districts, to make village supervisory districts, to make, and keep going up the line, assembly districts, state senate districts, etc. So those building blocks, those wards that are combined in different ways, it's very important that those all be created in sort of a cooperative manner. It's called, they literally call it intergovernmental cooperation. And we both have to work with each other, the cities, villages, and towns with the county. So for instance, if we request a split in a town, the town comes back with, well, this does or doesn't work for these reasons. And usually it has to do with elections and that kind of thing. In cities and villages where they have the aldermanic districts, they come back with, well, it doesn't work because you want to be split into, say, 3 areas for supervisory district. We need 12 And that would work fine because the one goes into the other. They're all divisible. But say they want 14 because they want to combine them for 7 aldermanic districts. Well, then that's harder because the numbers don't mathematically always fit. Wards also have law requirements. They have to be certain sizes. They have to be representative only by the block boundaries, which we run into a lot of problems with. We usually like to not use obscure things for the boundaries. We usually try to stick with very popular main roads or rivers or railroad tracks or things that you can say, are you north of the tracks or south of the tracks? And so people can explain during an election where people live and help people know which area they have to be in to vote. So that's our big first step, and like I said, it is the hardest and it's the most complicated, and we have the same amount of time to do that as we do all the rest. So after we do that and we send it out and we hold this public hearing, then we go through the second part, which is basically working back and forth with the municipalities to make any adjustments to those wards to accommodate both our needs and their needs. And that usually goes pretty well. We have, again, 60 days to do it. We are fortunately or unfortunately, not that many communities in the county represent their local city, village, or town supervisors by district. A lot of them elect at large. So for those that elect at large, this is usually a very quick rubber stamp process. For those that elect by district, then it takes a little more time, but there's only less than half a dozen of those, so it usually is the only ones we really need to work with or meet with. So it goes, again, very smoothly. The third step is coming back to the county board, and for the county board to basically accept those changes. The committee will review them first, and then have another public hearing, and then you're done. You've adopted your supervisory plan. We send all the reports on to the state, and the state starts their process. And that's part of why the state keeps us to these time frames. Generally, the last 60 days isn't needed. All we need is enough time to get to the county board and hold that second public hearing. And so usually 30 days is sufficient. But that's the way it's set up from the state. So the next couple things, the state then begins all of their process, the last step, and the state requires that all elections after January 1 of next year must be held according to these new boundaries. So, the administration committee, this is a couple new things for you. What they will be doing is reviewing these draft plans that we will develop in our department. I will be using a program that the state provides called Whistler, W-I-S-L-R. It's an online software program. We don't download it to the county at all. We store the database out on the cloud, and the state actually sends us information when we request it so we can print materials. We will revise these plans as a starting point, staff will, to meet the guidelines, and I'll go over those in a minute, and then we will present them to the committee, and the committee will make decisions about which ones to present to the full county board. Then we'll send on, the committee will decide when to send the requests on to the municipalities to create the wards, and we will also work with them under the committee supervision to adjust those wards. Again, moving on, that's basically what they'll do. What are our guidelines? Well, of course, the first and most important is equal representation, the concept of one person, one vote. We need to try to obtain the lowest possible statistical variation from that 4,439 people that we can. People are always asking me, well, what can we go to? What can you go to? What's the number? There is no hard and fast exact number. There isn't a rule that says you need to be within 5% or 7%. There is a rule. It's a very complicated, simple test. And I shouldn't say simple. Yeah, it's called the 4-point malapportionment test that's been applied by the courts in the past. And it's more complicated than I even want to figure out when I read about what it is. So basically, my goal is always just make it as close as I possibly can, and that it will meet the 4-point malapportionment test. So I've already done some looking, some checking. We've already had a couple people in our office doing a couple tentative plans, just sort of seeing what could be possible. It's very achievable to reach 0 to 2%. The 2 plans I've done so far were all within 1% plus or minus. So it's very achievable to do 0 to 80 people from that 4,439. And we do It was brought up at the administration committee. Supervisor Standifer heard a comment about protecting existing political districts. You can recognize those, but basically what the rule is you're supposed to try to consider, as part of your drawing the lines, the core of existing political districts, not necessarily protect incumbents, because protection of incumbents is gerrymandering. That's illegal. But there isn't exactly a button you can push in the program. I think it was a little misleading, whoever told you that. There's no button, you just push and it does it.
Well, if there is, ignore it.
Yeah, I checked, there wasn't. So anyway, some of the other things we do look at besides one person, one vote is compact contiguous districts. They have to be touching. You can't take a piece from, say, put Rush River with Warren Township unless they touch. You'd have to pick up Pleasant Valley along the way. So what always happens, for instance, is Deer Park, which is completely surrounded by Ceylon, always has to go with Ceylon. You can't pull Deer Park out. Everything has to be touching and contiguous, and the same happens to the village of Wilson. They have to be compact. In other words, you can't create long, super skinny, or long, super narrow districts. You're supposed to consider that they should be compact to the best of your ability. Communities of interest. If there were any specific minority population we need to address in this county, we would address that. We don't usually have that. What we usually try to look at is rural areas. Try to keep some of the rural areas coordinated and together, and try to keep some of the more urban areas together, or areas within a city or village that are considered more of a group or an area, perhaps divided by like Interstate 94 or a major roadway. So those are some of the things. Another thing we do try to do is not make it really complicated. I have down decreased splits of municipalities. What that really means is when you run an election for the next 10 years based on these splits, you try not to make it complicated for the clerks. The clerks hate it, and Cindy will be reviewing these very carefully, if they have multiple districts in a community and their ballots get extremely complicated. So if you have to split a community, we try to split it once at most. That's our first goal. And we also look at, this is the core of a district, or political voting power, which is another important thing. Decrease the number of municipalities sharing a district. Well, we do that to the best of our ability, but there's only so far you can go. We have to have 4,000 people. For instance, in the more eastern parts of St. Croix County, that'll mean like Deer Park and Ceylon and a couple other towns. And so a single municipality does not have a lot of voting power. On the other hand, if there's an opportunity to say, instead of 6 communities sharing a district, we could get away with 5 or 4, we would try to accomplish that. These are after we reach one person, one vote. These are as you refine the edges and fix things and try to make them a little better, okay? Impact with schools. We try to do the best we can with that. It's extremely hard, especially in this county. As most of you are probably aware, the school district boundaries are extremely random, extremely hard to even understand why where they're at. They're disconnected, disjointed, and not contiguous at all. So we run into a lot of challenges with that, and we do our best. So anyway, that's where it goes, and all of those things try to decrease the confusion and cost for the clerks and the voters as they go on. Okay? What happens next? The initial plans will be presented to the administration committee on April 18th. That's their next regular meeting. Based on how that meeting goes, they have decided to set up additional meetings as needed. They haven't scheduled anything yet. They want to see how that April 18th meeting goes. There will be a presentation of some kind to the May 3rd County Board. Based on our tight time frame and our 60 days, the May 3rd may be a little short. It's only a couple weeks after the April 18th date. So we may be asking, and the administration committee already discussed this, we may be asking the county board to consider a special meeting near the end of May in order to accommodate this. We know that you have your general committee of the whole meeting. It may be at your committee of the whole meeting that you would convene into a full county board meeting, or it may be asked that you move the committee of the whole meeting back a little bit, again, to accommodate finalizing this plan. Again, this is the most complicated step, the first step. After this, we probably won't ask that kind of additional request. So, I'm done, unless you have any questions or comments. Okay. Thank you very much.
Ellen, thank you very much. Beth, are you ready? We have a report, annual report from our Register of Deeds, Beth Pabst. And I believe, at least I know I read it, so it must be your report.
Bright green one, nice and easy
This
to
one.
find. So, well, the year in the Register of Deeds this year is not as unexpected as one would think. We actually had revenue that was down slightly from 2009. We're still suffering the effects of the economy, the effects on the housing market. It's actually that transfer fee portion that we're really suffering with. The average home sale has gone down significantly. Something that might have sold for $150,000 a couple years ago is now down in the 120s or somewhere in there. So that's kind of causing a big damper on our revenue. I'm not sure that there's a turn in sight quite yet. The other things that kind of went through the Register of Deeds office this year were we started some new software. We still are with Fiddler Technologies for our real estate software, but we switched over to their new updated program. It runs significantly different than the last program, so it took some adjusting to get used to it, but we're doing pretty good on that right now. The other significant changes for our office is we went to a, based on 2009 Wisconsin Act 314, we switched to a flat fee for recordings. In prior years, the recording for a document in the Register of Deeds office was $11 for the first page and $2 for each additional page. Well, the legislation changed it to a $25 flat fee, but then they added on, if you have records on the internet, there's a $5 additional fee for that. So right now, St. Croix County documents are at a $30 recording fee per document. And actually, that's been kind of nice for our office. It's cut back on rejections for documents. When they send in what happened is that, Minnesota has different fees than Wisconsin. And so people would send in a document that would have the incorrect fee, and the only choice we had then was to reject it, whereas now every document's $30. They come in quite well. If a document's missing a legal description, we can actually give the real estate company or the attorney a call and say, hey, you forgot to put your legal description on this. Can you send over the legal description? They can send it to us in an email or fax it to us. We'll attach it to it, and the document is able to be recorded then. So we have a lot less rejections now, which saves time and money, return postage on those documents. So that's kind of nice for our office. The other thing that we're doing now then, because of that legislation, is we're redacting the Social Security numbers that are on the documents that are on the internet. We haven't made a significant dent in the amount of images out there. We have approximately 1.7 images by the end of this year that will be on our image server out there available on the internet. By document number only, most of them. And so part of the goal is to get all the Social Security numbers off there. So that's one of the things that we're working on in our office too. We've only got a few 100,000 of them done. Most of them have been run through optical character recognition software, which will eliminate about 70% of those socials out there. But then we're putting eyes on the documents to get the majority of the rest of them off, hopefully all of them. About the other thing, there was some other legislation out there that affected corrective documents. You don't really see that on the outside, but we notice it inside. It's legislation to help if a document has an error in it. It kind of gives guidelines to the people submitting the documents as to what they're required to do in order to have a valid document come across on that. Other factors, we're down about 300 or about 3,000 documents from prior years. The other things that have changed is the electronic recordings. If you look on the back, there's electronically recorded documents about a little over halfway down. In 2009, we recorded 3,831 documents electronically, whereas in 2010, we recorded 4,320 documents electronically. And what that means is there's a submitter out there. They actually kind of email or electronically submit the document to us, which gives a lot faster turnaround in those documents. We're able to look at them immediately, determine whether they're recordable or rejectable, and they go back electronically too. It saves staff time for scanning the documents. It saves the county postage, so it's kind of nice to have a lot more of the electronically recorded documents coming into us. We were a little short on our revenue predictions, again, coming mainly from the transfer fees. So we cut back on the expenses in the office to try to accommodate some of that. Otherwise, the other big project we worked on last year was we had a land records digitizing project, back imaging project that we did. So actually, prior to this year, records from 1974 to the current year were all digitized electronically. They were backed up. Any records that were prior to 1974 were just in the paper format, and we did not have a valid backup in case of a disaster to save those records. Those have all been digitized, and by the end of 2011, those will all be imported into our image system. So they'll be easily accessible for everyone, and they'll be saved from any type of natural disaster or loss. So that was kind of nice. That's about it. Does anybody have any questions? All right. Well, I just do want to thank the people that support us. We have the IT department, as always, you know, especially with that new software, giving us a lot of support, answering all of our questions. The county clerk's office, Cindy's office, is always helping us with questions, handling, you know, we work side by side, so she handles a lot of stuff for us, and we really appreciate that. And of course, building services, Art is always moving stuff around for us, keeping us clean and tidy in there. And then Greg Timmerman and the Corporation Council, they always give us a lot of good advice. And then I also do want to thank my staff and the administration committee for all they do for us, and then of course my community development committee, because they serve guidance for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Mr. Tobin, you may present yourself. This will be the report for Building Services. Our Building Services Director, the Honorable Art Tobin.
Good morning, everyone.
Art, I'd like to point out right now you don't have enough time to go through all of that. So.
Well, I paid Cindy Campbell $20 this morning to say that I had to keep my report under 2 minutes, so she took the $20, so we're going to keep it underneath there. So. I would like to thank, starting out, everybody in my department. I am a department of 17 strong for building services, service technician, 2 lead workers, 8 custodians, and 1 utility worker. So we have 17 full-time employees. We take care of a footprint of approximately 340,000 square feet of office space. We handled this past year, between January and December, we handled approximately 3,400, 3,500 work orders. It was in your packet that was sent out earlier. And I have to thank my staff for the quality work that they do. We got good people, and they do good work. And I want to first and foremost start by thanking those and how they do their daily work. One of the biggest things that you'll see in the packet that we handed out this year is the amount of savings that we were able to generate off of the renovations that we've been doing, the improvements that we've been doing, trying to grasp, squeeze as much blood out of the turnip as we possibly can. I'd like to thank the team building that's been going on, not only between my department, but also working with the admin committee and also working with the county board as a whole. I think the money that we're saving right now shows what we can do. To be able to cut back on energy costs and still provide quality service, and to be able to lower by almost $250,000 a year of real money, that's a big cut. And it's gone by things that have been, you know, new boilers, insulation, energy walls, new lighting, those type of things, and we're trying to lower that footprint as much as possible. One of the things that we've strived at this year is to cut back or to find out where our usages are. In the past, what happened was all of the billing came in, and it came in as a whole. It would never break out by a building. So what we did was we broke it down by facility rather than by campus. It's a way of doing energy auditing. And we've done that, and we've been able to succeed quite well on that as a whole. So we're cutting back and taking a look at those footprints that we're doing. We're also getting good payback on the investment that this county board put into on improvements. We strive to do a 7 to a 7.5 year payback on utility costs or on an improvement. Anytime that we can get it less than that, that's a good thing for the county, and reducing that footprint as much as we can. Again, we're doing those things. We've got a big capital outlay year this year, working on walls here, loading dock up in New Richmond. We've got a new roof that we're finishing. We've got some insulation work out at Baldwin that we're doing. We've got gas pumps for installation this year. So we have a good capital outlay improvement process. And the one thing that we're trying to do, again, with admin and county board support, is to prioritize where we're going to be making our changes. And instead of doing the bust it and buy it mentality, what we try to do is we're trying to move forward with a depreciation plan, how things can fit into the budget, and also to realize that we're not the only department that's out there asking for funding and support from county board as a whole. And with that, as Beth did, I'd like to say thank you to the other departments that I work with, the quality of people that we work with, and it's not a one-person job. So I'd like to say thank you to my parent committee, county board as a whole, and all the departments that I work with. And if there's any questions, Casey will answer them when I'm done or something. I don't know. Is there any questions? Buzz?
Arguably 47% energy savings is a very significant amount, and I just commend you for that.
Thank you. And I'll pass that back on to my department as a whole, too. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The report, the annual report from the IT area was distributed, but Director Boron is not with us this morning for a verbal update, so I would direct your attention to that. And at this point, we will take a short break. The reports are completed, and then we will reassemble at about 10 o'clock, and we will get right into our agenda. We stand informal. We're back in session. The next agenda item is agenda item number 3. This is a resolution approving receipt of established rate of compensation for Sheriff's Deputy Sally Standard. This comes to us from the Public Protection Committee. Chair would entertain a motion. Motion from Horn, second from Larson. Discussion. Any discussion? Any questions? My goodness, this is an amenable bunch today. Seeing no discussion, I assume you're Supervisor Marzoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering if someone could explain the implications of the PTO involvement in this.
I am looking at Committee Chair Larson, and do you want to do that, or do you want to defer to the sheriff?
Let the sheriff. I think you can explain that, how that works.
John, the buck has just been passed.
Somehow I knew that would happen.
morning, everybody.
Morning, John.
I get to the right sheet here because we have two issues, but the total cost, should the board choose to pass this particular resolution, would be in the amount of $3,027.41.
Any additional questions? And John, why don't you remain here because we've got another one coming up. Supervisor Hermsen.
Thank you, Board Chair. Sheriff, could, and just so the board understands, this $3,000 amount is, that's not coming out of any budget or anything like that? You don't have a fund, for instance, that's set aside for this?
We do not have a fund, no. Basically, what it is it's PTO hours that were used by the deputy to supplement their income to make them whole during the time that they were off on workers' comp. So it's giving back, if you will, those PTO hours so that the employee can again have those available should they need them. But we have to put a dollar figure with it.
Supervisor Norton Baumann.
I was just going to expand on that a little bit.
Go ahead.
And the reason for this benefit is because of it's a clause in the contract awarded to law enforcement under the discretion of the sheriff, coming to the full county board. And I think everyone would agree the reason why this is for this duty incurred disability is for an officer or someone acting in under the in a dangerous situation that gives us this benefit, why they have the ability to be compensated or repaid their PTO time. That, I guess I want to just expand on that. And what happened in this case here was this officer, as it says in the top, was injured while rescuing a severely injured woman who had been involved in a motor vehicle accident. So if you want to expand on that reasoning.
Supervisor Hermsen is correct. There is a clause in the WPPA or law enforcement contract, article number 17, that allows for officers who are engaged in work activity that is something out of the norm, something more in that dangerous type situation, where if they're injured during the course of acting in these events, they can be made whole if they're injured. It's a matter of practice that we will not forward any resolutions to either the committee or this board if in fact the officer was not involved or somehow injured through something that was out of their control, and they're acting again in this dangerous situation, or someone acted on them in what was a dangerous situation. In fact, we've had officers ask to be compensated under Article 17 in the past for injuries that were sustained as just a matter of routine course of the day, and we have not forwarded any of those requests to either the committee or the board. So this is certainly the exception and not the norm.
Supervisor Norton Baumann.
Thank you, Board Chair. John, are not workman's compensation payments not taxable to the deputy?
Kristen could probably answer that better than me.
You're correct, Sharon. Workers' compensation payments are not taxed. So whatever portion of the deputy's pay that's paid by workers' compensation, that is not reported to the government as taxable wages.
Supervisor Norton Baumann.
Well, I certainly have empathy for any deputy who's injured in the course of their work. I'm wondering if this resolution would not in fact compensate the deputy more than their ordinary pay would be do for them, since they're not going to have to pay tax on the workers' compensation portion of their income.
I do look at what 100% of their pay would have been, and then I subtract out what workers' compensation pays them, and we will only reimburse them for the difference. So we do basically make sure they're not compensated more than 100%.
Thank you.
Any additional discussion? Not, I think you're ready to vote. This is a resolution approving receipt of established rate of compensation for Sheriff's Deputy Sally Standard. Motion from Horn, second by Larson. Proceed to vote. And that is approved. Agenda item number 4, resolution approving receipt of established rate of compensation for Sheriff's Deputy Richard Haverland. Chair will entertain a motion. Motion Larson, second by Hurchin, Joe Hurchin. Joe, get your second in, please, and discussion. Supervisor Marzoff.
I'd like to ask of Supervisors Stauffer and Hermsen why they voted no.
Supervisor Stauffer.
This incident where the officer was injured was while they were making patrol, but they weren't involved in any emergency activities. It was just part of their driving around. And I guess I wasn't convinced that it met the same level as the other incidents that we have passed, where they were actually carrying out service to the community at the time that they were doing it. Maybe my words aren't exact, but I felt this was, I wasn't sure this met the same standard.
Supervisor Hermsen.
Thank you, Board Chair. I too will echo Supervisor Sather's sentiment in Stauffer, I'm sorry. What did I say? And my reasoning was that I looked at this as as any county employee, where would we give, say, a snowplow driver the same benefit, or say a Health and Human Services Department worker that was traveling from New Richmond down to Hudson for a meeting of whatever. So that's where I was looking at it. It was just a normal course of action. Any one of us can be involved in a traffic accident, moving about in the public. And since it wasn't, like we say, it wasn't in an emergency situation or anything extravagant, I just thought they should abide by the normal PTO benefit that all employees have.
I have actually heard at committee and again this morning, and I respect the positions of Supervisor Stauffer and Hermsen. The reason that I brought this resolution to the board was simply this. The officer, through no fault of their own, was forced to take evasive action by a vehicle that didn't stop at a stop sign. I know it's a little bit of a stretch, but here's my mindset, so I hope you can understand. I liken it to an officer, and we've heard about him, and thankfully it's not been here, but the officer that takes the lunch break in the Twin Cities and, you know, is shot at or shot in the back while they're having a break. It's nothing that officer did, and they certainly weren't engaged in anything dangerous by eating lunch unless they choke on a chicken bone or something, but you know, it wasn't something that this officer did. If the officer had been at fault, if they had been driving too quickly or doing something like that, I never would have brought this forward. I would say it's the officer's fault, and it is what it is. This wasn't the officer's fault. They were acting in reaction to something that was forced upon them, so that's why I brought it.
Supervisor Hermsen.
Thank you, Board Chair. Could we have a dollar amount associated with this resolution?
Sheriff.
That dollar amount would be $1,561.91.
Any additional question? Any comment? Supervisor Rebholz.
The first time that I can recollect this coming before, this type of thing coming before this board was last fall, or within this last year, when Dennis Dilsted brought it here. And I told Dennis at the time that I thought we were starting something that we didn't need to start. Because once you start it, where do you stop it? All of these employees, as I understand it, do have a right to carry short-term disability, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that's an obligation of the person themselves to protect themselves on a short-term disability.
With all due respect, Supervisor, it's in the bargaining unit contract, and I have to respect that. So that's why we're here today. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I think you're prepared to vote. This is a resolution approving receipt of established rate of compensation for Sheriff's Deputy Richard Haverland. This is a motion from Larson, second by Supervisor Joe Hurchin. Proceed to vote. And it is approved. Agenda item number 6 is going to take a little bit of explanation because this is procedurally a little complicated. Even assuming that we're going to do it, it's procedurally complicated to get to it. So I'll try and make this as simple as possible. This comes as a result of the motion at our last meeting that was not germane under the rules of the open meeting law, and that was a motion that was proposed to reestablish the funding for this position, you'll recall, which was removed in our budget hearing, and the funding did not fund the position. It was placed in the contingency fund. If we are going to consider this today, it will require the suspension of the rules to do it. The reason for that is our bylaws indicate that a motion to reconsider must be done either at that meeting or at the next meeting. Obviously, we're past that time. So it's possible to reconsider this if the rules are suspended to permit the reconsideration. That will require a 2/3 vote. If by 2/3 vote the rules are suspended to consider this, we will do it. If it does not pass by 2/3, then it becomes moot and we move on. So that's step number 1. We are going to suspend the rules or not suspend the rules and then decide if we're going to reconsider the motion. If the rules are suspended, which will allow us to reconsider the motion, it will require a motion to reconsider from a person who was on the prevailing side at the budget hearing last October. And there were 10 people that voted to remove the funding. A motion to reconsider this could only be made by one of those 10. Are you following that so far? A person that originally was on the prevailing side, removed it, it would require one of those 10 to do it. Now that would be also considered a budget amendment. This was removed in the budget. The funding was placed in contingency, and if we're now going to fund it, since this would be a budget amendment, the motion to reconsider this would also require a 2/3 vote. So are you clear on both of those? Procedurally, that will keep our skirts very clean, but it seems complicated. But we need to follow the rules, and those are the rules. So, Supervisor Malik.
Can you remind us who those 10 people were who are eligible to make the motion if we get past the suspending the rules step?
Well, it just so happens, Supervisor Malik, that I do have that vote in front of me from the minutes. So if we get to that point, I will be carefully looking, assuming someone wants to reconsider it, who that person is. I don't think I need to read that off in advance because we may not get there. We'll see. So first of all, we are at the point where if we are going to consider this at all, it is going to require suspension of the rules. So at this point, Chair will inquire if there is a motion to suspend the rules. Supervisor Marzoff?
I just have a question, if I may.
Yes, sir.
First, thank you. I remember looking back at the rules and bylaws that we operate under, and when I initially came across the word prevailing, I assumed it meant being among those who voted in such a way that the motion went their way. But in reconsidering that and trying to apply it, if I'm not mistaken, the word prevailing refers to those opposed to that. And I wondered if either you or Corporation Counsel could clarify what the definition of prevailing is as it is used in our bylaws.
I could do that, but at this point I will have Corporation Counsel do that. We're going to agree on this, but since you're asking a legal question, I'll let the Corporation Counsel respond.
I think what you said, Supervisor Marzoff, was, I think you said it correctly both times. Prevailing, a vote on the prevailing side is a vote that is for whatever action results. So in this case, those 10 that voted to remove this item can make a motion to reconsider the removal of the item, because the vote went their way. The amount of money was removed for funding that position.
Thank you. We are in agreement. Supervisor Hermsen.
Thank you, Board Chair. I too am a little curious when the time comes for the board to have the ability to suspend the rules and the bylaws. Does that not only apply to the rules and bylaws found in our handbook, or are we in fact allowed to suspend the rules of Robert's rules? Because I'm a little concerned when that starts happening. If we're going to allow the ability to abandon Robert's rules, then it's, I guess at that point, it's Katie bar the door. Anything goes. So I can understand removing or suspending the rules of our bylaws, but I don't know that we can suspend Robert's rules.
I do not disagree with you, and the rules that we would be suspending are the board rules that require that a motion to reconsider can only be made at that meeting or the subsequent meeting. That is what would be suspended. It would give us the ability to then consider this, assuming that the board votes to suspend this rule.
Can I make an additional comment?
Yes, you may.
Additionally, Supervisor Hermsen, the county board rules are the first line of rules for the county board. And if something in the county board rules contradicts a Roberts rule, the county board rule would apply. The Roberts rules also apply to those items that aren't covered by any of the county board rules. So the Roberts rules are the fallback rules. The county board rules are the first line of rules.
So the first thing that we need to consider is whether or not this board wants to suspend the rules to be able to consider this at all. So depending on what your vote is, we'll see where we go. I remind you that if there is a motion, it will take 2/3, which today would be 13. My math is correct? So at this point, Chair will inquire, is there a motion from any supervisor to suspend the rules to consider agenda item number 6? At this point, I'm going to need to stay where we're at, and I've called for a motion. I see no motion. I'll inquire one more time if there is a motion from any supervisor to suspend the rules. Any supervisor could make this motion if that was your question. Supervisor Rebholz?
I move that motion.
I have a motion to suspend the rules. Is there a second? Any supervisor, I think, to suspend the rules. Your second? We have a motion from Rebholz and a second from Schrank to suspend the rules. That's all this motion is. This has nothing to do with reconsideration. This will require a 2/3 vote. Unless there is an affirmative vote of 13, the rules are not suspended. Are you clear? Supervisor Hermsen.
Thank you, Board Chair. Could we have could someone give the definition or the reason under what pretense board rules would be suspended? I think, if I recall, Supervisor Malik gave a good explanation of that at the admin committee. If he'd be willing to do so, or if you recall.
Supervisor Malik.
Well, I think it's important to understand that the only part of our rules proposed to be suspended is the part allowing a motion to reconsider to be brought today, 6 months after the budget was adopted with that action there. The rest of the rules are all in effect.
That is correct, and I would also point out that if the rules are suspended to permit consideration of this item, they are only suspended for consideration of this item. Once we have disposed of this item, the rules are automatically back in effect. Supervisor Sather.
I just have a comment that, we've got the bylaws and the rules, and there is a provision to reconsider this in a timely fashion. This doesn't meet that standard, obviously. The position that you're talking about hasn't significantly changed. We're dealing in a budget, we're getting close to budget time where, we can't be creating positions unless we really, really need them, based upon the increased staff in the last few years. I still don't believe this position is necessary, and I don't think it warrants suspending the rules.
Any additional discussion? If not, proceed to vote. This is a vote on suspension of the rules. It requires a 2/3 vote. Motion Rebholz, second Schrank. Proceed to vote. Oh, and then I voted incorrectly the second time. Oh, it failed anyway.
It failed. Okay.
The motion to suspend the rules fails. So we will move on. Agenda item number 7 is a resolution to hire seasonal employees in the Building Services Department. This resolution comes from the Administration Committee. Is there a motion? Motion from Supervisor Seacard, second from Marzoff. Can you get your second in, Supervisor Marzoff? Discussion. Supervisor Malik.
The Administration Committee is the parent committee for the Building Services Department, of course, and when this was brought to the Administration Committee, I sought more information, and I voted provisionally to support the seasonal employee, part-time. We usually do this, you know, this is routine. However, it seemed to me the times are not routine, and so I requested that when this be brought to the board, we get further information about addressing specifically what we could do to primarily mow less, to spend less on the maintenance of our grounds at all of our facilities. I've noticed over the years that some highway departments, for instance, spray a sort of growth retardant on grass so they don't have to mow it as often. I've been to some of the state parks and noticed that they only mow some areas once a year to keep small tree sprouts from getting ahead of them, and they have shrunk the area leading from a campground to the fire circle to a much smaller amount, so that they can spend less. And that's the background of my position on this. Perhaps we can ask for that information to be provided to us now by Art. I don't mean to run the show. You're the chairman.
You're doing fine.
If you're ready for Mr. Tobin, then it'll be so.
We did check on pricing, just to give the committee of the whole here, the entire committee, a brief overview of what we're looking at. Right now, our lawn care person, we went from 2 people down to 1 person. That was done prior to me starting here about almost 4 years ago. Hourly wage on that individual is $9.52. We run it from Memorial Day weekend through Labor Day weekend on that position. If we were to do it on overtime, and again, brought this to the committee, but just so everybody has a clear picture of it, if we did it on overtime, we'd be running in excess of $4,000 for that same time period. I did go out and request a couple of bids for lawn care up there. Right now, again, we do the lawn care up at the groundskeeping in New Richmond. We do it at roughly $1,500 per month, and the lowest bid that we saw for coming in came in at $820 per time. Mowing 4 times a month came to $3,280. So that's where we came on that. We mow 13 acres is what we mow up in New Richmond. We do that for several reasons. Appearances. We have cemeteries that we take care of up there, and out of respect, we make sure that those are also taken care of. But we do 13 acres. I talked with staff. You know, we looked at cutting back on size. We also talked about a growth, something that will inhibit the growth of the grass. We went out and got quotes, not bids, but we went out and got quotes from some of the providers on that. And the most reasonable one that we came across was $220 an acre, and it had to be reapplied every 6 weeks. So to keep that down. So that's where we came in at that one. But we are looking at shrinking the size down. One of the reasons that we do take care of the 13 acres that we do is to try and keep, you know, our air intakes, those type of things, the grass, the pollen, taking consideration of the people that we represent up there, and doing that. But we do currently take care of 13 acres. And again, we could shrink that size, and we can also, I've talked to staff at, instead of going for 8 hours a day for this person, going to possibly 5 hours a day for this person, and cutting back on that, trying to shrink that a little bit. So trying to pinch the penny wherever we can.
So that would reduce the request from a half-time, a .5 to a what?
That one I didn't work out, Buzz, or Buck, but
5/8 of .5, is that the way to do the math?
we can do that. We can cut down on that part of it.
If you do that, I think I will have gained something. Or we
Okay.
will, it's not
Okay.
gonna go in my pocket. A .317 person.
So we'll go from an 8-hour to a 5-hour. There's that, we can shrink on that part of it. But once again, we do, and just in clarity, we do use that person for other things on the facility as well. We use that person for, brush cleaning, we use that person for cleanup. If there's, moves, that type of thing, we use that for that as well, so.
Supervisor Malik, Chair inquires if you are formulating an amendment to the resolution or if you are directing a suggestion to Mr. Tobin.
I propose to amend the motion, but I'm looking for where it says half-time or .5. Where is it in here? It doesn't. Well, supposing that we were to amend it in the therefore sentence by adding at the very end of it, be filled by a 5 hours per day employee. Sounds like that would work. I do move that amendment then to insert at the end of the therefore provision by a 5 hours per day employee. So it'll read, the seasonal employee position in the building services department be filled by a 5 hours per day employee.
Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Marzoff. Motion Malik, second Marzoff. And for clarification purposes, Chair inquires, are you intending then that this means that that person would work 5 hours every day, would in fact be a 5-hour-a-day employee? Because I was under the impression that this was going to be a part-time summer employee. And I'm wondering if you have now moved this person from a part-time up to a mandatory 5 hours a day position? Question?
That would be inconsistent with the intent of the amendment. So if the amendment needs to be worded differently to make that clear, I'm looking for help.
Well, I'm directing my gaze at Mr. Tobin, and I'm wanting some clarification of the original approval of this position as a part-time position.
It is a part-time position. It does work between basically Memorial Day and Labor Day weekends. It is not a, if this individual does not show up for work, if it's raining that day, we notify that individual does not come, so in that sense, it actually is a part-time individual. So if it is not a guaranteed that if whoever the groundskeeper is, if they don't show up for work that day, that they get paid anyway. They have to be on, so it is a part-time person.
Robert?
So then I'm to understand that part-time meaning it's barring rain or any other given things, it's 40 hours a week during that time frame, and that's what makes it part-time? Or does it make it part-time that they're working 4 hours a day or 5 hours a day? Which is it?
It's actually a little bit both, Supervisor, and in the fact that, again, it's part-time because it's only a summer help. It's not a 12-month position that we rotate around to different duties or responsibilities. And then again, if it's if that position, again, if it's raining, inclement weather, lawn doesn't need to be mowed, or if there's not duties for that person to do, they won't be there.
Supervisor Norton Baumann.
Thank you, Board Chair. I'd like to know if we have a rainy summer, or if we have a lot of brush growth, or if, what would we be paying a full-time employee in your department to do this work that this part-time seasonal employee does at $9.52 an hour? Please, can you tell me that?
I don't have the hourly numbers with me right now. But again, if we were to do this in addition to our core duties that we do on facility, again, we would be on the average of figuring those hours again would be $4,600 to $5,300 on overtime per month. Per month.
Supervisor Armisen.
Thank you, Board Chair. Hey, Art, you had a plan with a part-time position between Memorial Day and Labor Day.
Correct.
And you must have figured a total number of hours that you would use this person for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I'm hearing from Supervisor Malik is we were under the assumption that would be 8 hours a day for that time.
For that time span.
And so I guess maybe the way to amend this and help with the wording is if we're is to knock down the number of hours total.
Okay.
That way, as a department head, you have the ability, if it's raining, you can send them home, but you have.
And we do that, already, Supervisor. If what you're looking at is to go from 8 hours to 5 hours, and just figure that as no more than 5 hours on a day average, or want to do it that way, I understand that.
I was thinking more of, since we're looking at just put in here a total number of hours. If you had 8 times whatever the number of days, what was that? 5 times 25. Yeah, but I'm just saying, take the total number of hours that he budgeted, planned for this. Instead of 8, take it down to 5. Maybe work from there.
Well, I would remind the board that at the present time, there is an amendment pending. It has been proposed and seconded, so the board does own an amendment at the moment that we're discussing. And that is to add the language following the final paragraph by inserting the words by a 5-hour per day employee. Supervisor Marzoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Supervisor Malik, I think my suggestion may have been misinterpreted. If we go to the original reconsideration, this is for the part-time person, the seasonal part-time person. We talked about reducing his numbers, that person's numbers, to 5/8. And 5/8 of an 8-hour day is 5 hours. Okay, that's a half-time, no, that's okay, excuse me. I withhold my comment. I got confused.
Supervisor Stoffen.
Do you have the number of the total number of hours the request was originally for?
What I brought forward was simply 8-hour-a-day person times 5 days a week, not working holidays. And, my request was, on the position justification form, the question is, how much is this net savings for each month the position is unfilled? I wrote none. The position is currently paid $9.52 an hour, no benefits, gross monthly approximately $15.23. If not filled, the duties of this position will need to be covered by overtime by building services staff. And I figured it out that way. But again, inclement weather, holidays, all those, the bottom line is the $9.52 an hour, and moving that forward.
Robert.
Just for clarification, this was in your budget, the number for the 8-hour, so.
All of the money is in the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Rebels.
Why can't we just say it's so many hours a week? It could be 25 hours a week, or it could be 27 and a half hours a week. That would be cutting in half about what you were saying. That's a suggestion for that amendment.
You were not moving an amendment to the amendment, I didn't think. Supervisor Norton Baumann.
Thank you. The way I understand the amendment as it was stated, it would indicate to me that this particular employee could not work more than 25 hours per week. So, if we have rain 4 days out of a week, and the employee works 5 hours that week because it's the 5th day and they work 5 hours, how do you make up the work that doesn't get done during that 25-hour week? It would seem to me it would make more sense to say a certain number of hours for the time period that you've stated, and let you decide as a supervisor when you want that person to work to accomplish the tasks that everybody who drives by or goes to or visits the New Richmond campus would like to see done.
Are you suggesting that we're trying to micromanage the department?
Yeah, I am saying that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Supervisor Malik?
I'd like to make another point. When Art offered to reduce the hours to 5, he was not able to offer any reduction in the amount of mowing to be done, because he's looked at options and he says we have to mow it all. And so if we cut back on the hours of the part-time employee, he intends to use overtime to mow the same amount. So I'm going to vote against my own amendment and say that the answer to this is for the county board, which should not get into micromanagement, to go out there and stake the areas that are not to be mowed anymore. We can't seem to get at it through any mechanism that we 19 can do on the fly today. We'll push down in one place and it'll pop up at another. So I suggest you vote against this amendment. Next year when we do the budget, we'll just eliminate all mowing.
Any additional discussion on the amendment? That is what is in front of us at the moment. We'll proceed to vote on an amendment, motion by Malik, second by Marzoff, to insert the language at the end of the second paragraph by a 5-hour per day employee. You're voting on the amendment.
I think you're absent if you do that before I'm ready to proceed.
The amendment fails. We are back to the original resolution as proposed. Any additional discussion on the resolution? At this point, I think we're ready to vote, and Marzoff was the original second, and you need to get your second in. Motion Seacard, second Marzoff. You're now proceeding to vote on the resolution to hire seasonal employee in the Building Services Department. Proceed to vote. And that is approved. Agenda item number 8, we are going to be deferring. We are unable to proceed with consideration of this agreement. As of this morning, some questions arose from the bargaining unit with respect to some language, and until that language is further clarified, we will not be able to proceed with consideration of the agreement that had been reached with WPPA. Supervisor Malik?
I move to table until it's brought forward by the administration committee.
Is there a second? Second. Been moved and second to table agenda item number 8. All.
That's okay.
Do Do you need it? Do you need it here? Yeah.
No, you don't have to.
Yeah,
I just think
let's just do this by show of hands. All in favor of the motion to table signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, carried.
Who had the second?
Robert had the second. Yeah. Supervisor Marzoff?
Yes, could we just have an indication of how the members of the administration committee voted on this resolution originally?
We didn't vote on it.
We actually are technically right now in recess
We didn't vote on it.
because we were trying to get this in front of us today. So at this point, there was no vote. Well, we're just about done. We've only got one item left, so we'll be out of here pretty quickly, I would assume. Agenda item number 9 is a resolution determining the authority of the Community Development Committee to allow all-terrain vehicles on the Wildwood Trail. Chair would entertain a motion for consideration. Motion from Supervisor Norton Bauman, second from Joe Hurchin. Is there any discussion at all on this motion? Supervisor Stoffer.
The first whereas, I believe, is incorrect. It states that the Community Development Committee made a decision to allow all-terrain vehicles on Wildwood Trail. I received the audio of the recording and looked at the draft minutes to verify this, but what we actually said is that we will allow ATV use on the trail if there's a plan brought forward to the committee that is approved. So it is completely contingent upon the CDC approving a plan, and if there's not a plan brought forward that the CDC approves, then it is completely dropped. So I believe the first whereas is incorrect.
I have a point of order then. Does that mean that there's nothing for this board to do?
I was going to defer to Corporation Counsel, who was one of the drafters of the resolution, as to whether or not this is housekeeping and corrects it, if it should be an amendment, an interpretation of response to Supervisor Stoffer.
It would be my opinion that whether or not the first whereas, whether it's accurate or not, since I was at the meeting, I came away from the meeting understanding that the committee directed a plan to be made and presented back to the committee for approval, and that it was the committee's position that ATVs should be allowed on Wildwood Trail. And whether or not the plan was approved or not, there's still the issue of whether or not the Community Development Committee has the authority to make that kind of a decision. So the issue today is still relevant to the committee because they need to know from the county board whether or not they can proceed.
Supervisor Lucky.
Well, if you look at the resolution, it calls for a determination to be made on 2 issues. And then if you look at page 3 of the resolution, it asks the county board to insert its determinations into the blank space on page 3 under the words county board determinations. So I would like to submit for the board's consideration of some language that addresses those 2 issues that are raised by the resolution. And so I would be making a motion to the effect of inserting the following. First of all, on the issue of the Community Development Development Committee's authority to allow all-terrain vehicles on the Wildwood Trail, the St. Croix County Board makes the following determination. The Community Development Committee is a subunit of the St. Croix County Board and does not have the authority to allow all-terrain vehicle use on the Wildwood Trail. If the Community Development Committee wished to pursue the issue of allowing ATV use on the Wildwood Trail, the committee would have had to have done the following. Number one, write language revisions to the following. Chapter 30 Parks Ordinance, the St. Croix County Outdoor Recreation Plan, the St. Croix County Parks and Recreation Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan, and Chapter 74 Snowmobile Trails. 2, write any ancillary ordinances needed and obtain any necessary permits. 3, utilize an ad hoc citizen advisory committee in the revision, creation of all of these plans and ordinances. 4, vote to approve or modify or disapprove the language revisions and any ancillary ordinances, and then if approved, vote to send them to a properly noticed public hearing. 5, review the public hearing comments and, if desired, make revisions to the language based upon the public comments. 6, vote to approve or disapprove the amended plans and ordinances, and if approved, vote to send them to the St. Croix County Board for its consideration. The St. Croix County Board would then vote to approve with or without modifications or disapprove the amended plans and ordinances. Then, on the issue of the appropriateness of allowing ATVs on the Wildwood Trail, the St. Croix County Board makes the following determination. The St. Croix County Parks Ordinance, the St. Croix County Outdoor Recreation Plan, the St. Croix County Parks and Recreation Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan, and the Snowmobile Trails Ordinance all currently contain language prohibiting all-terrain vehicle, ATV, use on the Wildwood Trail. Information and advice from our County Corporation Counsel, Risk Manager, and Parks Director indicate concerns and potential liabilities and financial costs that could be incurred by allowing ATVs or motorized vehicles on the Wildwood Trail. Therefore, the St. Croix County Board affirms its support for these previously approved plans and ordinances.
Supervisor Luck, first of all, is there a second?
Second.
Second from Malik. Supervisor Lucky, Chair interprets your intention that this be motion that would be the determinations as the attachment to the resolution?
On page 3. Yes.
Well, obviously you have it in writing because you read it, so can you present Chair with a copy of that?
I sure can.
Do you have other copies that can be made available to the rest of us?
Actually, that's a pretty good suggestion. If we're going to consider this as the attachment, we better have copies made for distribution.
My question was somewhat disingenuous, because I think the clerk has a copy, and it can actually be put on the screen if the technology all works right.
You do?
Yeah.
Could you second, please?
I did.
Yes,
Oh,
we
you
have a
mean,
second
oh,
from
press
Malik.
the button. Talking about technology, yeah. It's hard to teach an old dog new tricks.
Chair inquires, would you like paper copies in addition, or is the electronic version, which I didn't know was available, going to be sufficient?
I think both is best.
And as you and I have banded back and forth in the past, belt and suspenders?
Belt and suspenders, and I always refer to your list.
While paper copies are being made, I think you have heard the reading by the supervisor. It's now displayed. Chair will inquire if there is discussion on the motion by Supervisor Lucky to attach what she read as the indicated determinations of the board. Discussion. Supervisor Sather.
Well, let me first say that I don't have an ATV, so I don't have a horse in the race here, but I was on the committee.
Is your microphone on?
Huh?
Is your microphone?
Yes, it is. I was a member of the committee and voted in favor of using the ATV, allowing ATVs on the Wildwood Trail, because we felt that we had the authority to regulate the use of the public recreational facilities. We discussed that it is a recreational trail, why not use it? There's considerable paperwork that was sent. Is not liable for any injuries or damages suffered by the user. Well, that would limit our liability, if not absolve us of any liability. And then the sky falls. Henny Penny here says, the Corporation Council says, well, having ATVs operate on a trail at high speeds or go off the trail and come back on the trail would result in collisions. Well, if you're going to be afraid of every little thing that you do, why do we even put cops in cars on the road? It's dangerous out there. And I will concede, because Supervisor Lucky obviously has her ducks in a row, and the majority of the people here are probably going to agree, because it's easier to do nothing than to do something. And I'll concede that we're going to have our asses handed to us on the vote, those that voted for the trail. It's a recreational trail. Why not open it up for a trial period? And it's easy to add all this, make it as cumbersome, if not impossible to do. And I feel that's pretty much where our board chair and the chairman of the administration committee, who obviously collaborated with some other people and decided they want to stop anything from being done. And there you have it. We're going to get trounced on, but we still feel we're in the right, and disagree with. I mean, some of the objections, the liability issues that our risk manager thought up, and even Sharon said earlier, if we sit here with what ifs and what ifs and what ifs forever, like I said, it's easier to do nothing. And congratulations, the board will probably succeed.
Additional discussion. Supervisor Malik.
Well, I do think that it will come time to revise our recreational plan at some stage in the next few years. And I think it is perfectly proper, and it is acceptable. It is indeed expected of that committee that they will consider all options. Everything will be on the table, and that's the appropriate time to talk about it and hear from the citizens. I remember the last time the plan was up, the use of horses on the Wildwood Trail was a matter of some contention. And I don't recall if the vote was close when it came down to the end, but there was a good deal of passion around the idea of whether horses would be incompatible with other uses. And I think it's a variation on that same topic, whether it's compatible uses for that trail. And that's those proposals, and understanding them and studying them is within the ambit of the committee.
Supervisor Meyer, maiden speech. Turn your microphone on.
The concern of horses being on the trail with ATVs, they're shared in Minnesota all the time. We ride the trails, we cross with the ATVs. The ATVs are expected to pull over to the side and turn their engines off. My concern is this is a 7-mile stretch that I've ridden many times. It's pretty well straight. For us horse riders, except for the ones who live along there, it's not really. We tried to use it as an extension to a gully trail. It didn't work out because there wasn't any parking. For the ATVs, that's my concern, is that it's a 7-mile stretch that doesn't go to anything. So what I see is ATVs zooming back and forth. And that may or may not be a problem. If they're out there, they're viewing the scenery, they're having a good time, that's great. But they need someplace to go other than 7 miles.
Supervisor Hermsen.
Thank you, Board Chair. As Chair of the Community Development Committee, and since I feel like my committee is under attack for something that is, in my view, is quite out of line, out of order with our bylaws, and everything about this just smells bad. We have a process of governance here, and as Corp Counsel like to so duly point out, of what the pecking order is. That the committees will report to the chair, we have subcommittees that would report to the standing committee, and so on and so forth. I guess my anger comes out of this is the appropriate, or the method of which this resolution comes before us. We have, my understanding was our rules and bylaws said that any resolution coming before the board had to come from the committee that handled it. This resolution didn't come before our committee. We have now an administration committee of which our worst fears were that someone would turn around and try to make the admin committee act like they are top dog over every other committee. If there was a feeling that I guess the way I look at this was there's a complaint about the actions of the CDC committee. And there are avenues and procedures on how to address a committee, how to make that come forward to the board. And that wasn't followed here, which, well, it wasn't followed. It makes me a little angry. The other part of this that comes down into this is we have information provided to the board that makes sure that to point the worst light possible. No balance here. It's because we got, I believe, a corp counsel that has put his own personal opinion into this rather than a professional one. We've got a parks director that seems to want to run trails according to his personal opinion rather than what the plan said. So what I'd like to point out to this board, the false information that is being presented to this board right now. For one, it said everything seems to be revolving around the updated outdoor recreation plan and how page 52 makes one mention of motorized vehicle traffic, including four-wheel, all-terrain vehicles on the trail prohibited to prevent damage to the trail surface. Well, I really wish that we would have read a little farther into the plan, since we're seeming to believe that the plan is law, which it isn't. What I would like to point out right away is that the recreation plan in the front end says this plan serves as a guide to the St. Croix County in the development of parks and outdoor recreation facilities over the next 5 years. Throughout this document, planning level information on timeframes, cost estimates, and funding sources is provided. This information should be considered preliminary and subject to change. No planning document is ever followed exactly. We have a corp counsel that just presented to you a resolution saying that this county board adopted that plan, which was then turned over by our bylaws to the CDC committee on the authority of how that will be implemented and taken care of it with the oversight. And it says right in there that we have the authority and the ability to set the control of that trail. We also have, according to the plan, it says since '71, St. Croix County has signed, groomed, fenced, trimmed trees, brushed, replaced culverts, installing surfaces, and so forth. Let's see. And generally maintain the Wildwood facility as a multi-use recreation trail open to the public. And it says right after the part where they're saying that we don't want ATVs on the trail, says that it's prohibited to prevent damage to the trail surface. What they don't go on to tell you after that is that the the Parks Department is on schedule to improve the trail surface. So what was in the plan as that one sentence that Corp Council wanted to bring out to you, that they were that the ATVs were disallowed because of damage to the trail surface, was being addressed. I call a lot of this in here, as we say in our industry, FUD. I think we know what that means. If not, I'll explain that FUD is, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That my committee, I will say it that way, our committee, we did a lot of homework on this. We did a lot of background checking. We didn't just willy-nilly throw it out there to allow ATV use. Like Supervisor Sather said, he doesn't have an ATV. I don't have an ATV. Have no intention of taking an ATV down that trail. However, here's the part that gets me really interested in, I should say. When we look at the plan, if you want to go down and read the plan, it says that the research on the development for the goals of what that plan was supposed to set out, I'm losing my spot here. That the goal, one of the objectives was that the St. Croix County Finance Committee shall refer all tax deed deficient properties to the Land and Water Conservation Committee for acquisition consideration prior to initiating tax deed sales. And that the Land and Water Conservation Committee, in conjunction with the Parks Department, shall evaluate the land for recreational use and make recommendations to the Finance Committee. Well, I find that an interesting clause. Maybe CDC should have a resolution coming forward to the board that says that the Finance Committee isn't doing their part. But one of the other objectives that we have to address when it comes to motorized use on that trail is, according to the American Disability Association, if we have, say, a veteran come back from Iraq or one of the wars, we can't stop them. They want to run an ATV down that trail, we gotta grant it. So when looking at also going back to what that recreation plan that the county adopted, the Citizens Advisory Committee and the executive summary on page 24 said on the needs analysis. Let me speak to the needs portion just for a moment. It was said in the plan that we would, that the Parks Department was supposed to, Community Development Committee was to look at the needs of recreational needs throughout the county and address the changes that come forth from that. The Citizen Advisory Committee, when back in 2005, when this plan was put together, it said for trails, we were to encourage private development of recreational areas of multi-use trails that could help link trail systems. One of the other number of bullet points on here. Let's see, Wildwood Trail, trailhead and resurface 7 miles for multi-use. Where was the other one here? There was a number of times where, and I'm not seeing it right in front of me, but it's in the executive summary of our recreational plan, of which, again, this Community Development Committee was chartered to do. We are following the plan and trying to address the needs of the growing needs of people with ATVs. But what really gets the guy going here is what comes from our recreational plan. And it comes from the guidelines that comes out of the Wisconsin DNR, the SCORP group, I guess. And this was their 2005 through 2010 of the Mississippi River Corridor region, of which St. Croix County and Pierce fall into. And their conclusions, I believe, fall very clearly telling us what our recreation plan should be addressing. It says here that going between 05 to 010, that we need to make, that we can make some assumptions about the types of outdoor recreation that are popular in the Mississippi River Corridor region. and how this relates to the democratic characteristics of the region. Participation rates for yard games, visiting a farm or agricultural use, and driving ATVs off-road are particularly high in the Mississippi River. On the other hand, participation in bicycling, nature-based education, cross-country skiing are low relative to other regions in the state for us. We are demographically, this corridor is relatively young and rural and has an average median income. Younger people tend to participate disproportionately in several outdoor recreation activities, including camping, outdoor volleyball, running or jogging, inline skating, frisbee golf, downhill skiing, ice skating outdoors, riding ATVs, snowmobiling, water skiing, and boating. I guess what I'm trying to point out, we have a growing need. Our committee took the task forward, and the reason why we did is because there's 3 ATV groups wishing to make use of that trail. They turned around and asked for support from the town of O'Galley. The town of O'Galley turned them down. We have a number of people, which we, as much as they admitted, the number of ATVs in this county is higher than snowmobiles, and we offer them 0. We offer them nothing to ride on. And I'd like to know how this board would feel right away if all of a sudden, if we're going to use that mindset, that we say the same thing to snowmobiles. We're not going to allow any snowmobiles in St. Croix County. I think there'd be quite an uproar coming in here doing that. So the committee also heard from, during this whole bit that when it came up, we get letters from the town, or for the village of Woodville, and from the town of, or the villages or town of Spring Valley, asking to connect those two and make use of ATV trails, make use of that trail. We got the Chamber of Commerce asking from a business standpoint. We got a number of businesses in Woodville asking for that to be opened up. There's a trailhead. It says, that according to our recreation plan, that we are to develop a trailhead at Woodville. There they are. They're asking for it, and they want to continue that trail northward to connect, to get up to Polk County. The research we did also found that when asking Polk County on their county-owned trails, how it worked with multi-use trails coexisting with walkers, bikers, and ATVs on the same trail, county-owned land, and they said, absolutely, open it up. We've had no problems. Everything has been fine, and people are happy. However, Polk County also has some state-owned trails that are non-motorized that only work for bicycles and joggers, walkers. And she said up there, the parks director said, it's too bad because we don't get enough funding, and the bikers, walkers, they pay a permit, but we don't get enough funding to take care of it. The great thing about having ATVs on the trail, they said, is because 1, they're monitored, 2, those people work and keep things running, 3, they get funding to help towards that. Board Chair, our committee is chartered with looking at trying to develop not a community development, but the economic development. We're not going to get a lot of money off a biker and a jogger, and they don't spend any money. An ATVers, when they do their nice rides up and down through that, they spend money. They buy gas, they sit in restaurants, they eat their food. We have commerce. And originally, that's what that rail bed was for commerce, moving of commerce. I don't see why we need to all of a sudden make that a yellow brick road just for hikers, bikers, and joggers, when we already provide from county levy dollars a lot of trails in our parks. And those people could have plenty of places to walk, jog, and ride in those parks. Yet all of a sudden we have one avenue to present to ATVers, and look at what's gone on. we're being told that, well, the Community Development Committee ain't got the authority to do that. When all we're trying to do is put together a plan with regulations and safety and make sure everything is properly addressed. And yet, this resolution coming forward is basically telling us, you don't get to go there. You don't even get to look at it. And that's why I believe this thing is so out of line, so unfair. It doesn't follow our rules, because it was just a blatant shot without looking at any resources or the work that went on by the committee to try to make that thing right. I can't think of anything else, so I'll leave it at that.
Supervisor Marzov.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hermsen, you keep referring to our committee. Please bear in mind that our committee did not vote unanimously on whatever that resolution was that came to the floor on March 17th. I was not there. In anticipation of my absence from that committee meeting, I asked you specifically to please read into the minutes of the public record my comments, which I made to you in the email. You chose not to do that. I would like to just share a story. Are any of you in here stamp collectors? Philatelists? There's a wonderful story about an airmail stamp that was issued years and years and years ago, and by some quirk it was printed upside down. The airplane was flying upside down, the biplane. And it came down to the point where there were just 2 of those in existence, like our Wildwood Trail, which is a unique trail in that it doesn't have ATV use on it. The owner of those 2 stamps deliberately destroyed one of them, and his purpose was to enhance the value of the other. Like that one remaining inverted airmail stamp, we have one remaining unique trail in this county that does not allow access by ATVs. Let's look beyond the present to the kind of a legacy that we're going to leave for generations which follow, and use common sense and keep that trail as it is. As I mentioned in the footnote of my letter to you dated March 22nd, this quote from Chief Seattle, "We do not own the earth, it is only on loan to us from future generations."
Supervisor Sather.
Well, I just have one quick comment on balance that Steve mentioned, and for all the board members who are not a member of the committee, all the information that you got conveniently was the sky is falling, if you should consider ATV use on the Wildwood Trail. What's missing from this literature is the copy of the petition with over 1,000 signatures that we got from the local ATV club. From Baldwin, Woodville, Hammond. What's missing is copies of letters from several organizations, community organizations, that support allowing ATV use on the trail. If I was not a member, if I wasn't a member of the committee and I got all this literature, there's only one way to vote. You have to vote. You can't use ATVs on the trail. What's missing is balance. There was I think I maybe had 4 objections to ATV use and 30 or 40 plus emails and calls and letters in support of ATV use on the Wildwood Trail. Again, the balance isn't there.
I'll come back to you. I'm going to try and call on people that haven't spoken yet, and then we'll circle around again. Robert?
I'm on the Community Development Committee, and I was there for the vote. And I'd like to say I'm not an ATV rider. I don't have anything for or against. To steal a phrase, I don't have a horse in this race either. I went to the meeting on the 17th with an open mind. I didn't have an opinion. Well, I had heard from many people, calls, letters. They were so close in the number for and so close in the number against. I went to the meeting to hear what was going to be said, and I truly had an open mind. I didn't, and in fact, my mind changed a couple of times during the meeting how I actually felt about this. I heard both sides. I heard a lot of people make good points for, a lot of people that made points against. You know, I understand there's snowmobiles on there. I'm still trying to weigh out the difference between a snowmobile and an ATV. You hear a whole lot more people getting run over by snowmobiles than you do ATVs. You know, I'm told that there's nobody on the trails in the wintertime walking or snow or cross-country skiing, but then when you ask, people will tell you on both sides there are. Okay, so there's folks on both sides. So at the end of the day, I decided that I would vote for this, as Supervisor Stauffer indicated, that there would be some guidelines set, some speed limits. In fact, I volunteered to go out and set spots where they had to slow down or you know, whatever we needed to do to make that a safe trail on a trial basis for 6 months to see how it goes. Because I couldn't see excluding the ATV riders when we already have snowmobilers on there. And it just, it didn't make sense to me to not give this a shot, give it a trial, set up some guidelines, see how it goes, see if it, indeed they were going to regulate themselves. And then at the end of the season, take a look at it again and either make the permanent change or not. We spent 2.5 hours. People came, we had a public hearing on it. Like I said, I heard a lot of very interesting comments from both sides. And at the end of the night, we voted this way. Well, to my surprise, I guess that was 2.5 hours out of my life and a lot of folks' life that we'll never get back, because now I'm hearing it didn't matter anyway. I mean, because it didn't go somebody's way, we're going to bring it to another committee and we're going to end around some rules and we're going to shuffle the deck because it didn't go the way somebody voted. I guess my ending question is, had that been voted the other way, would we be here today having this conversation saying that we didn't have the right to make the decision to not bring it on? That would be my question. And, you know, I appreciate your time. I don't have a lot of passion either way for the ATV riders or not ATV riders, other than the voters that I talked to and the people that I represent indicated that they would like to see this done on a trial basis with some stipulations. And that's how we, as the committee, approved it, okay? It wasn't just wide open, drive as fast as you want, you know, all hours of the night, you know, things of that nature. We approved this given stipulations brought back to the committee and everybody agreed on. That's pretty much all that I have to say.
Comments from anyone that hasn't spoken yet? Supervisor Norton-Baumann.
Yes, thank you, Board Chair. First off, I was at the committee meeting. I'm a member of that committee. And my concern was on many fronts for this decision. First of all, our agenda for that night said, item E, alter outdoor recreation plan for ATV use on the Wildwood Trail. Okay, so if we're going to do that, my understanding is that since the outdoor recreation plan, among other things, was voted on by this county board as part of our community development plan, that the only body that could finally alter for good that plan was the county board. My position was that the CDC committee has the authority to go through a public hearing process, have a citizens advisory group involved, make some alterations to the outdoor recreation plan, and because the outdoor recreation plan is a part of the community development plan, this county board would have to approve those changes. The same would be true for the parks ordinance, the snowmobile ordinance, and the bicycle plan. This county board adopted all of those documents. This county board is the only board, in my opinion, that would have the authority to alter them. When I asked the committee chair to move this decision to the county board in its final form after all of the appropriate steps had been taken, the comment was, oh yeah, I guess I will. Nope, I won't, because I know how the votes would be stacked on the board. That is what prompted me to take a look at the financial considerations. Nobody that night talked about what is this going to cost. I did bring up the fact that in my conversation with Sheriff Schultz, he indicated to me and gave me permission to take to the committee the idea and the number of $22,000 a year for the first year just to get the ATVs and the overtime officers to patrol the trail. I then went to a state statute, 23.33. It clearly spells out everything that has to be done for anybody to dedicate an ATV trail in this state. None of those considerations were brought up and looked at seriously by our committee. I then went to Administrative Code, Chapter NR 64. There are a series of things that must be done, one of which will come, I think, into major play in this decision, is that we would have to obtain permits from the townships to allow ATVs to cross their town roads. Whether or not that happens is not my decision. My indication, though, listening that night, is that the townships are not in favor. We have 16 easements on that trail. My question is, who has the right of passage? The farmer with the tractor or the ATV going down the trail? There's all kinds of things. We have to have dedicated signs that are approved by the statute to consider an ATV trail. None of those things were considered. And what alarmed me was the cost. We don't know what this is going to cost. And the process by which the committee just decided we're just going to do this on a trial basis. In my opinion, we cannot do it on a trial basis unless we change the documents which now control the usages on the trail. If the citizenry, in conjunction with public meetings, we didn't have a public meeting, Robert. We had public hearing. We had a committee meeting. We did not have a public hearing. If the community, in conjunction with this committee, wants to have a vote for this issue to be open, this trail to be open for ATVs, so be it. But let's follow the law. Let's follow the state statutes. Let's do this properly. That's my only concern, and my major concern was the cost of this. What will it cost? Nobody has addressed at the committee level what this decision will cost the county.
Hold just a minute. Anyone that's not spoken on this issue yet that wishes to comment? And if not, then I'm going to take additional comments. Supervisor Marzoff, then I'm going to come to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Supervisor Sadler, you mentioned that the deck was stacked with all of this literature in our packet today in preparation for this meeting, and absent from this was the petition sheet to which you made reference at the March 21st Administration Committee meeting. And the suggestion was made at that meeting that this all be put online. I don't know whatever happened to that, but thinking that, as I don't often get to the county website, others may not also, I took it upon myself to print at my own expense the document that Bob Heisey from Land and Water and Parks had sent to each of us, because it contains such vital, important arguments against ATV use on trails. You had that same opportunity with your petition signatures to put that in front of us, and to say that the deck was stacked, I think is an unfair comment.
Well, you're wrong.
Supervisor Stoffer?
Should we allow ATV use on the Wildwood Trail? I personally don't know. That's why I thought it was a good idea to look into a plan and see if we can find something that works. Maybe we won't come up with a plan that works, and maybe we will, and we can go forward with there. But I think it's a little premature to say, unless everyone else knows a lot more than I do, I don't have enough information to say that it's a bad idea. I think we should go ahead with looking to see if we can find something that works. And if we pass a resolution that says it's not appropriate for allowing ATVs on the trail, does that prohibit us from changing the outdoor rec plan in the future. Now, the outdoor rec plan is a 5-year plan. If we try out ATVs on the trail and we find out it doesn't work, do we want that in the outdoor rec plan? Doesn't it make more sense to try something out first and then use that experience to modify the outdoor rec plan? The liability issues, there are many issues, potential concerns, and that's why I thought that we should not go ahead with allowing ATV use on the trail, but look to see if we can find something. Snowmobiles have liability issues too. What if two people are coming on the trail, traveling at high speed, and have a head-on collision? Snowmobile doesn't have much for safety equipment, so that could be a very serious event. Are ATVs any worse? And then, as far as whether it's appropriate for the CDC to allow ATV use on the trail without modifying the outdoor rec plan and bringing it back to the county board, from my reading of the outdoor rec plan, it seems logical to consider that we don't need to. If you look at the page 52 that's referenced, it says ATVs are prohibited on the trail to prevent damage to the trail. Well, if we can find a plan that works, that minimizes that damage, that addresses that thing, that sentence. And also it says it is prohibited. That is the current state of affairs. It doesn't say ATVs will be prohibited. And I have a lot of quotes from the outdoor rec plan that encourage us to look at more uses for county parks, trails, and such. I'm probably going to repeat some that Steve has because I didn't pay attention to cross off the ones that he did. On page 1, it says, there is a need to provide for increasing recreational demand. This plan serves as a guide to St. Croix County in the development of parks and outdoor recreation plans over the next 5 years. This plan also enables the county and its municipalities to participate in various grant programs for local communities. One of the points of making the plan was so that we could get grants. It says that right at the beginning. That's one of the uses. Does that mean that the plan was also made for to provide guidelines for how all parks are run? I didn't see that, but right at the beginning it says that one of the purposes is to get grants. Page 2, no planning document is ever followed exactly. I think that's one thing that we should be doing, is looking at this as a plan, and it's something that we want to follow and use as a guideline. Then if you go on to the goals, there are many goals here that say that we should look at expanding usage. Page 10, Goal D, continue to evaluate and update existing county parks, facilities, trails, and natural areas to meet the developing growth patterns and recreational needs of the county residents. Allowing ATV use, to me, goes along with that goal. Objective 1, project future growth patterns and recreational needs. Objective 2, periodically conduct a survey of residents to solicit public input regarding parks and recreational needs. Now, we have had 2 meetings where people have come up and given significant input about this, and we haven't had an open meeting. I think that would be something that would be good to have an official public hearing. But we did get this 1,021 signatures of people who think that we should allow ATV use on the trail. To me, that says we should look into this. This says maybe it's not going to work, but if there's 1,000 people who think we should, shouldn't we at least try? Continue to, page 11, Objective 6, continue to update existing county parks, facilities, trails, and natural areas to meet the changing recreational needs, maximize use of the resource, and decrease user conflicts. Like has been mentioned, there are some potential problems that we have to address, and so it doesn't make sense to allow ATVs if we can't address those. But these goals are saying we should look into this. Page 12, Objective 3, identify compatible and incompatible trail uses when planning trail systems at county parks, facilities, and natural areas. Consider topography, safety, noise, trail surfacing, user interaction, maintenance, support facilities, and signage. Once again, there are all these issues that we have to consider before we allow this. Costs, the maintenance, are the ATVs going to be wearing down the surface more? Safety issues, what speed limit is appropriate? Yes, we need to think about all those things, but I think we should go ahead and look into it. Page 13, Objective 1, annually review the park ordinance and policies and procedures for parks, trails, facilities, and natural areas. This is something supposed to be looked at annually to find out whether, to evaluate what makes sense. Page 23, trails, motor-powered use, received 25 points, or 10.9%. In this outdoor recreation plan, 10% of the people involved said that they thought motor-powered trails were something that we should have. Page 55, multi-purpose trail usage continues to be evaluated. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to evaluate it, and this outdoor rec plan says we should do that. Only compatible uses should be allowed. Once again, we have to consider the issues, liability, cost, maintenance, but we should go ahead and evaluate this. Based on all of these, the plan implores us to expand usage that would include considering ATV use, provided that it doesn't harm other uses or cause other problems. Speaking to the ordinance 30, Section 7, G2 would prohibit snowmobiles on the Wildwood Trail also, except that number 2 makes an exception on the Wildwood to authorized vehicles. Well, the ordinance doesn't define what authorized vehicles are. It's apparently leaving that up to the Parks Department and the committee or the board, someone to define what authorized vehicles. So if snowmobiles are an authorized vehicle, where is their authority to be authorized, and why can't ATVs use the same route to become authorized? That's probably sufficient for now.
Supervisor Malik.
I want to signal my utmost respect for my peers on the county board who have done their honest and level best to advance an idea for which there is substantial public support. And I'm deeply distressed by the divisions among us that have arisen over this issue. And I sense the passion and hear the words. Nevertheless, I'm going to vote for this amendment. This is not the first time that I have thought about ATV use on this trail, and the information that has been provided to us, including the fact that there are 1,000 and some signatures on a petition, is not new information. I think, and again I say this with the greatest respect, and you on the committee, the majority of you who want to try and experiment with ATV use on the trail, are free to use your own judgment naturally. But I think that it would be a mistake to use significant staff resources in investigating the suitability of ATV use on the Woodville Trail. I just don't think the county is ready for that, if that's the trend of the future, and I don't think it is the trend of the future even at that. Now I say that recognizing that oftentimes an idea that the majority doesn't think is a sound idea at the time is advanced through a committee, and it becomes the idea at some subsequent time, the idea of the times just not being right for a particular idea. It has an appropriate role in American politics. And so I say this with some reluctance, but I do honestly believe that there will not come a time in the next decade in which the majority view of this county will be that ATV use on the Wildwood Trail is a good thing. So that's the way I feel.
I'll be back to you if there's, I guess I already asked that question. So Supervisor Armisen.
I guess the part that still comes back and bothers me out of this is we seem to have a double standard on this board. And that's what the part that really infuriates me. We can't seem to honor a vote. We can't seem to, we can turn around and we talk about the costs, the worry about the costs. And I think I can easily say I'm probably one of the more conservative people on this board. But we have the example that's been given before you is saying how we have expended $210,000 in the last 30 years for that trail. Break that down at $7,000 a year. I think probably for the most part, there's probably days we spend that on lunch. And we can't somehow find it amongst ourselves to give a group larger than the snowmobile community $7,000. And they willingly said they are ready to help with the funding. Also to address the funding is that we have in our state statutes that they have set up in there saying that there is a trial period clause under state statute 23, that if we allow UTVs, which are the utility vehicles on that trail, then we get additional funding besides the $450 that comes from an ATV use. And that expires as of June 30th of 2012. The committee looks at things like this and we're saying, you know, well, here's an opportunity. But the part that I'm flabbergasted at here on what we're saying, that the Community Development Committee doesn't have the ability to waste those kind of resources or don't have the ability to make that judgment call on $7,000. Yet last month, let's remember what went on here where we turned over to the Administration Committee $3.3 million of what they can kind of pick and choose what they want to spend it on without coming back to this board. I asked that question and was very quickly told they can make a change to that spending and we don't have a thing to say about it. But by golly, if the CDC wants to spend what breaks down to $7,000 to give ATVers an avenue, one avenue in the state, in St. Croix County, to connect between Spring Valley and Woodville, with the possibility, since Woodville said they opened their trails up to allow them to go north, I don't get it. We're trying to connect communities, and here somebody we're under the opinion that we are hamstrung here, that we can't, we're not allowed to do that. So were we going to look at cost? Obviously we're going to look at cost. Obviously we're going to look at safety concerns. Going through the state statutes, ATVs, there is quite a few requirements and restrictions on what they can do. Much of it addresses what we heard at the community development meeting that night. So I just would urge the board, why do you want to hamstring us like this? I guess the other example would be, I suppose, if someone said we're not allowed to use motorized wheelchairs at the health center because it makes marks in the floor, the CDC could bring that forward and no more motorized wheelchairs. It doesn't work that way. You got to allow us to do our work. And to throw a clause like this and hinge it on what was one sentence in a plan seems to me to be way out of line here. If the board has a problem with things, you got to let us do our work. You got to let us go take it back to committee. We'll bring it forward. But as I said at the committee meeting that night, when Supervisor was upset that I said that I wouldn't bring it to this board, we weren't in a position where we could bring it to a board. And besides that, and I'm going to still hinge on this, our ordinance said we don't have to. If you want to look at the recreational plan, I suggest you look at the cover of that plan. and where that plan came from, and it was from the Planning and Zoning Department, the committee. The committee is referenced everywhere in that, and the county board, by a resolution, adopted that by having the committee work that plan. And I'm going to urge that you guys don't interfere with that plan. We're trying our best to address the needs of the county. And we're not speaking just specifically just to the bikers, the joggers, and the walkers. We have to look at the plan to address everybody's needs.
Supervisor Horn.
I guess it's going to be more of a simple question to the Community Development Committee. Have you guys made a final determination, or as Supervisor Stauffer's talking about, are you guys still working on these plans? So is it something that has already been decided by you guys, or is it coming to eventually to this board?
What we have voted on was to investigate using or allowing ATVs on the trail. We have now trying to form a work group, to go back and address all the, it's balanced between those that are for and against, to address all the concerns, and then come back and work that in the committee yet. So I guess, do we have anything that's ready to come to this board? No. It's just the mere fact that we even took up the issue that got everybody in such a row over this that needed to come in here. Which I think, like I say, I believe we're just sitting here wasting the board's time.
Supervisor Norton Baumann.
Thank you, Board Chair. My understanding at the Community Development Committee meeting was that the committee voted 4-2-2 to allow ATV use on the trail. The work group that was suggested that night by the committee chair involved the leaders of the ATV groups, one township chairman who was not in favor of the use, and 2 committee members who voted for the use. I can say I hardly call that, what shall I say? I can hardly call that a group that doesn't have some invested, some investment in the work rules. I didn't hear that night that there would be anything more done than to meet with this work group and come up with the rules by which the ATVs would have to operate on the trail. I didn't hear anything about the state statutes, the crossings, the permits on the town roads, all of the considerations. I got a whole list. I didn't hear any of that. What I did hear, though, is that the committee was intending to not bring any of this before the county board for action. That's what disturbed me, along with what is it going to cost.
Is there any additional conversation or discussion? If not, here's what is in front of us at the moment for consideration. We have a motion to attach to the resolution, which procedurally would be like an amendment, these determinations. If you are in favor of the determinations that were displayed on the board, and I think everyone was given a copy, if you are in favor of those being the determinations, you will vote yes. If you are opposed to the determinations, you will vote no. Then the determinations either will or will not be attached to the resolution. Either way, once we have decided what is the outcome of the proposed determinations, we will then proceed to vote on the resolution. At this point, we will vote on the determinations. That was presented on a motion by Supervisor Lucky with a second by Supervisor Malik.
Don't vote yet, please.
And do you have your second in, Supervisor Malik?
They're in, they're just voting.
Are you ready?
When you press it too early, you're absent.
At this point, proceed to vote on the attached proposed determinations. The determinations pass on a 10-9 vote, and the determinations are now attached to the resolution. Is there any additional discussion on the resolution with the attached determinations? Supervisor Stoffer.
I move to amend the resolution in the first whereas, second line where it says allow. I'd like to have that clarified to say research allowing. The first whereas, the second line and third word where it says allow, change that to research allowing, so it says the CDC made a decision to research allowing ATV vehicles on Wildwood Trail.
Second.
I would like to see a copy of the written motion in the minutes, because that is what was said. That's not factual. So I'd like to see the minutes before you change that.
Okay, let me explain what that sidebar was about in case you couldn't overhear us. Corp Counsel was raising the point of wanting to see the original motion. Chair was taking the position that irrespective of what that original motion said, a motion on the board floor to amend this language is germane and in order, and we agree on that. So the motion is in order. We had a motion by Stauffer, and the second was from, Sather, to amend by striking the word allow and inserting the words research allowing. Is there any discussion on that amendment? Supervisor Rebholz.
How can we do that? We haven't seen the vote and what the motion was by the Community Development Board Committee. I was at that meeting, and what's being proposed is not what I heard. What is on this sheet is what I heard.
Supervisor Lucky. Second line of the resolution. No, the first whereas. Second line of the first paragraph, strike the word allow, insert research allowing. So instead of reading made a decision to allow all-terrain, it would read make a decision to research allowing all-terrain. Supervisor Norton Baumann.
Thank you, Board Chair. If in fact the motion at the CDC or Community Development Committee would have been to research allowing ATVs on the Wildwood Trail, I probably would have voted for that. That was not my understanding of the motion that was made that night at the meeting, and perhaps I did misunderstand, but it wasn't my understanding that evening.
Supervisor Stauffer.
I have the draft minutes that Monica provided, and I'll quote, there was the motion by Lauren to allow ATVs, then Lauren amended his motion to include that a couple committee members form a work group to meet with the ATV Association to work out the provisions to be considered at the next committee meeting. And then the motion was further amended by PV, second by Norton Baumann, to include no ATV use on the trail until the committee has an approved set of rules. Roll call vote, all in favor, pass. So the motion, PV made a motion to say that there would be no ATV use until the committee passes approved set of rules, and that is an amendment to an amendment where Lauren said we will have a committee to recommend rules. I can provide audio too. I have the audio file if anyone's interested.
Any additional discussion on the proposed amendment? If not, we will proceed to vote. This is an amendment on a motion by Stauffer, seconded by Sather, that would have the effect of striking one word and replacing it with two words. Is everyone clear? We're voting only on the proposed amendment. Proceed to vote. And the amendment fails. We are now back to the original resolution that's in front of you with the attached determinations. Discussion. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, I believe you're prepared to vote. This is on a motion by Supervisor Norton Bauman and seconded by Hurchin. Get your second in. Joe, you need to get your second in. We're now voting on the resolution that's in front of you. The amendment to change the language did not pass. The attachment of the determinations are attached, and that's what you're voting on. Proceed to vote. And the resolution does pass on a vote of 12-7. I didn't think it'd take that long. I'm kidding. Actually, I'm surprised we're done. Couple of items. I would remind you that we are planning to have a meeting of the Committee of the Whole on the 14th of this month. That meeting is going to begin budget consideration and some preliminary strategic planning. It is also going to include what we hope is a business plan that will come from Health and Human Services that will be discussed on the special meeting this coming Friday. I would also remind supervisors of the memo that I distributed to all of the county mayors, village presidents, and town board chairs early in March, and I indicated to them that this board was open to suggestions and comments that they might have for ways to share resources, to try and do things in a collaborative and cost-effective way. I can tell you that I have received several comments back, several very interesting, and I would ask all of you if it is possible between now and the 14th to touch base with the particular jurisdiction that you represent, whether it is a city, a mayor. You might talk to your mayor, Supervisor Horn. If you represent a city or a village or a town, and just again inquire if there are opportunities that we might potentially be able to consider some ways to reduce redundancy, because redundancy does in fact cost us money, and if we can figure out more efficient ways to do that, I would encourage it. I would also like to point out that as we're continuing to operate in a bit of an unusual situation with respect to the budget repair bill and waiting until there are some final determinations on some likely new methodologies that we'll be operating under with respect to personnel, that when you get a chance to remind our employees that we value their service and that we do in fact have dedicated and loyal employees, the changes that are likely to occur are certainly not to be interpreted that we don't value our employees. that we do have good and valued staff, and will continue to work together cooperatively. Supervisor Sather.
Does the administration committee need to come in from recess and adjourn?
Since our agenda is done, I think the chairperson can simply adjourn that meeting because we've nothing more to consider. So that meeting is adjourned?
Yes.
And this meeting is adjourned.
I can
Thank you
say
very
it's
much.
adjourned.
Members,
Oh, I'm sorry.
sorry, members of the Public Protection Committee, I need your signature on this resolution. That's all I have.
We are adjourned.